Hey, welcome to the Solid Podcast. Good to be with you all. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Neal, with my co-hosts, Jefferson Rogers and Jeff Fieldstead. And we're good to be back with you here again for episode 2 of phase 2. We had phase 1, now we're in phase 2. And if you're familiar with the Solid Podcast at all, this is all about living a solid life. We have a special guest here with us today. We're very honored to have him on with us. I think he was on with us at least 2 times prior. And the great Justin Prince. If you haven't had an opportunity to follow him or know who he is, well, he's somebody you should definitely start following because he brings a tremendous amount of value into this great world. He's had a lot of success, not just in business, but in life, with his family, his faith, his fitness. He's got just a great all-around solid life that he lives. So, Justin, we're grateful to have you back once again, and here with us are
3 of my favorite guys. Let's do this.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Let's do this more often.
Yeah, man. It's
Get
all
it more time with you guys. I'm all in.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, a lot has happened since you were on
Yeah.
with us because it was probably 3 years ago
Yeah.
the last time you were
Crazy.
on with us before. And you had a booming business then, and then some things happened there,
Yeah.
and you kind of started over with that, and then you've just launched into orbit once again. And I guess we can kind of talk about all that stuff. There's so
Yeah.
many things we could talk about with you. But
Yeah, it's interesting. There's my story before was, came from a broken home at age 12, moved 13 times in 7 years through the teenage years, started a business at 25, had no professional background. I was selling animated Bible videos out of a mall kiosk. Started an entrepreneurship journey at 25. First business fails, below zero financially, moved into, the loft above your wife's parents' garage. Mm-hmm. And so you tell that whole story, which is all true and real, and then ultimately built this business that we did. We did billions of dollars in revenue with, and it's like you hit the pinnacle, from like the valley to the top. And the company that we'd taken over, a 25-year-old company. It was a private equity group that specialized in distressed assets, had bought the debt, converted it to equity. Then they hired us, this little SWAT team, to see if we could come in and take this company. The company was 8 years in a row of declining revenue, like double digit per year. So it was basically doing a nosedive. So we came in as part of this team and tore the company to the floorboards, rebuilt it, kept the good parts, got rid of all the bad parts, and we did a couple $1 billion in revenue over the next 10 plus years. And in that period, it was literally changed your whole life, travel all over the world, made a fantastic living, just the whole thing, impacting people's lives. I mean, you're literally living this dream life that you'd once dreamed of. And what I didn't know at the time, at the moment, but the equity group had structured hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of debt onto the company. So basically levered the company up with a ton of debt, which means it'd be like refinancing your house, pull all the cash out, and now the house has all this debt structure. So at the end of 2021, we did $500 million in revenue, and at the end of 2021, when they did that, revenue softened just a little bit in 22. But all of a sudden, imagine your debt load's so high that even a little softening in revenue puts you in a really precarious financial situation. And at first, I didn't know it. You could just sense something was going on. You could just, could tell we're discontinuing products. You could just sense something was off. And by the end of 2023, they basically pulled me in. And they're like, here's what's going on. We're about to go bankrupt, and here's the thing. And then you need to go tell the sales force basically to work harder, and here's all the cuts that we have to do. Wow. And you're realizing we're like on the verge of death. Literally at any moment, if they don't pay the bills, we're toast. And so it's a pretty precarious situation to be in as a leader. And about 3 weeks after this, I get an email. We land in fall break in New York with my wife and kids. Driving to the hotel, and I get an email from one of the largest law firms in America saying, "We're terminating you, and basically we're going to sue you." And I'm thinking to myself, what the freak is happening? No phone call. I've been there for 11 years. We've done billions in revenue. I mean, you're the number one earner in their sales organization. I'm a minority equity partner. Not even a call, not even a like, hey, let's talk about this.
And this was obviously after the last podcast you guys did.
Yes, this is all after.
Because at that point, there was no indication.
No, zero. Yeah. And here's what's so interesting is now, so here you are. You're at the peak, and now you're at, basically at, down in the new valley, wondering what you're going to do with your life. Your entire income's toasted. And, you learn a lot of lessons. You guys know how it is. You really get problems introduce us to us. Like when someone's under stress or duress, you get to meet who you really are. Problems introduce you to others. You get to meet who they really are. And then problems can introduce you to opportunity. And I remember sitting with my kids. We had adjoining rooms in this hotel, and we've been traveling all day from St. George, Utah. So St. George, Utah is regional, so you have to get to Vegas or Salt Lake, whatever. So you've been traveling all day. And it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I order the kids, I tell my wife, hey, get them some room service. I'm on the phone with my attorneys. You guys have met that crew.
Yep.
And it's a really, really stressful time. I want to burst into tears. I'm freaking pissed. I'm sad. I'm scared. It's just all these emotions that you're feeling, right?
You can't make sense of it. You're going.
You totally can't make sense.
Yeah.
Your whole world's spinning. Yeah. Your wife's stressed out. I'm like, babe, it's gonna be okay. You know, you're trying to be kind of strong, but I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna be okay. Like, what, you know, if we're gonna get crushed by this thing. It's this multi-billion-dollar equity fund versus me. You know, just a normal human. But it also anchored down. So I've been a fighter my whole life. I've you know, I used to literally fight. I used to box as a kid, but like I literally like, you know, been fighting for it my whole life. So I sat my kids down. I just go, I want you guys to know. I said, I got terminated today, and my little girls. So to give you an idea, this business is all my kids know. We started it the day after my son was born. My little girl was 3. My little girl was 5. They've grown. This is all they've known. So I got terminated.
And they're now well in their teenage years.
This is, you know, they're now 14 and 16, and my little boy would have been 11. But it's all they've ever known, you know.
And you started when you were how old? And
I was 32.
And you're how old? You're how old now?
And so I'm 45 now. So this is 40. What is that? 43.
Yeah.
42, 43. And so I said to him, I got terminated. My little girl turns to her sister. What does terminated mean? And she goes, I think they means they fired Dad from the company. She goes, I thought Dad was the company. You know, like, what is happening, you know? And I said, I want you to know something. I said, they picked the wrong freaking guy. I said, I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight back. I said, you remember this night. Like, you remember, like, I'll freaking fight back. And I said, I'm not done. Like, we're going to come back. And your little kids were like eating their French fries, looking at you like, "Oh, dude," you know. But part of me wanted to burst into tears. That's, you know, because what they also did. That's the reason they did the lawsuit. Is they had to like create a narrative. So lawsuits can create kind of a public narrative, and just because most people don't know, just because it's written down in a public lawsuit, you think that it's true because it's just written, you know, just as a normal lay person. Sure. You don't realize that you can use it as a weapon to create kind of a narrative in the market.
It usually is used that way.
Yeah, exactly. And so the narrative was basically to try and crush my character. And it was really interesting. There's an old Mexican proverb that you guys have heard. It says, they tried to bury us. They didn't realize we were seeds. It's like the more they tried to bury me, the more strength I gained. You know, more people were like, this is so wrong. You know, this is not right. Anyway, long story short, a year later, we weathered that storm, and man, I got like a PhD in legal all of a sudden. I didn't know the difference between litigation and arbitration. You know, at this point, I'm just like, you know, you're just learning it in real time. And we you know, just crushed them in court because they just didn't have a case. It was just, again, it was just for the narrative, the public narrative. And long story short, a year later, we launched a new company. So I've been introduced to peptides. A lot of people, when they hear of peptides, they think of peptides that you would inject. They're what's called synthetic peptides. They're basically chemical compounds from a lab that you'd inject. We had found these biotech labs that were using artificial intelligence to identify, isolate, and do peptides, find peptides from nature, do human clinicals on basically natural peptides that were naturally occurring in nature, and that you could run through the gut. You could actually, because my biggest skepticism at the time was like, so are they still efficacious? Do they still work? And that all these studies of what they were doing to build muscle, to help you burn fat, that kind of thing. So we found these, they're called bioactive peptides. And I remember thinking, I was like, this is a big story. Like we could, you know, the one of the labs had $130 million of venture capital money. I was like, we could take this story. They had 14 YouTube views. So I was like, we need a little help of sharing this story. Yep. So I was like, let's go do this thing. So we launch a company. I'm the number one investor, the number one shareholder. I'm the number one investor, number one shareholder. So my point is, like, I just push the chips on. Like at this point, you've had no income for a year. But I'm also like, freaking A, dude, let's roll the dice. Let's see if this can work. And if it doesn't work, it would not have been a fun ride because you haven't been paid for so long, you know? Mm-hmm. And shipped product on October 28th was the very first time we shipped products of 2023. And 11 months later, we did $100 million in revenue. So, you know, the run rate, or not run rate, we had generated $100 million at that point of revenue. And our goal is to do $1 billion in revenue by the end of year 5 of annual revenue. And, you know, I was thinking, this literally hit me last week. So, you know, words matter.
Of course.
So, for example, if I say to you, I don't know if I agree, that's different than you're wrong. That's different than you're a liar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the words that we speak matter. And I've been telling this story that I was betrayed, which is true. Like that's what happened. But I thought to myself, you know what? What if they didn't betray me? What if they set me free? And what if they didn't bury me? What if they planted me? I'm just like, you just this repositioning of like, man, that was the biggest freaking blessing of my whole life to go through that. That company eventually filed what's called Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So for those of you listening, Chapter 11 means you kind of restructure the debt and restructure and reorganize the company, and you can survive an 11. So Chapter 7's like, it's over. Like close the doors, put a padlock on, and just sell the assets, sell whatever you have left. And so that company was going the wrong direction fast. Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And here I am, you're chasing your dreams and living your best life. And so it's so interesting. You go from like the bottom to the top to the bottom, and then you're building back, as it were, to the top. And so it's one of those things where there's a dream, a struggle, a victory, the sections.
Yep.
And sometimes when you hit the victory, you think that you're going to chill there forever. And you sometimes have to go through, bigger dreams again, which means net new struggle and new victories.
But don't you think, I'd love to hear your perspective because of how it felt the first time when you're at the bottom and you've got this dream and you're going towards chasing something big and you achieve it, you taste it, and then you go back down into that valley and you've got this dream again. What is the difference of feeling versus the first time when really you didn't have a whole lot to lose, and the second time you had everything to lose? What's the difference in your perspective, how it felt?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's so interesting. It's like the second time you're to your point, you're more of a public figure. Like people are watching this public execution happen in real time. More of a public figure. You definitely have more on the line from bigger family. You have a whole life that you don't want to have fall apart. But at the same time, you've built new muscle that there's new muscle memory. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you had never done it before. So before you're like, freak, I hope I can pull this off. This time you're like, I've freaking got this,
Belief levels higher, skill sets higher, more relationships.
Yes. There was a couple times, and I think this happens for all of us, not just as entrepreneurs, but in our lives, where you have just those freaking moments of self-doubt where it starts going a little dark in your brain on you. You start having a kind of a negative conversation with yourself. There was a couple times I remember thinking like, did these guys just freaking crush me? Like, did they crush my reputation so bad that no one will ever want to work with me again? You're kind of like, feel yourself going back, like, whoa, pull yourself back out of it. And as I felt that, again, the opposite happened. It's like, one of the lessons I learned is if life doesn't completely crush you, like the weight of it on your shoulders, it actually strengthens you.
Yep.
It's like in weights. If you're working out, that resistance and that pain that you go through is actually what's breaking it down to rebuild it. That's actually how you get stronger, right? Is to go through it. So it's like if life doesn't crush you, it does strengthen you. And I feel so much stronger today, so much stronger because of that whole experience. Like I'm smarter, I'm more wise, I am way more resilient, have way more empathy. Just all of those got heightened. Those senses got heightened.
Jeff told me something sometime that I think you could probably relate with, because while you were going through all that, seemed like it was crazy and it was bad and there's dark thoughts. But I'll bet now if you reflect back, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was.
With all the hindsight now, again, you got set free. But man, and there's some of those nights and you're like, you can't sleep at night. One thing I'd tell you guys about litigation, I think you guys anyone that's been through it will appreciate this listening. Dude, you freaking think about it all the time, even the back of your brain, like at night, you're like, because it's so unknown. Yeah. Just the unknown it. Now, I think once you've gone through it 50,000 times, it just rolls off your back. But at the first time, man, it feels freaking daunting, And
especially when you really feel and know that you didn't do anything wrong.
100%.
Yeah.
You're just like
how could this even happen?
100%.
Yeah. And
you want to go tell people, but part of it is you can't go say too much because everything you say is twisted and whatever, on like a public social media video, whatever. So you're just getting piled on and you can't even tell your own story.
Yeah.
Freaking sucks.
Yeah.
You know what, though? It's cool to hear your perspective now. We were just talking about this guy that we were interviewing earlier, and he has kind of a negative disposition, where most of the successful people that I know, they're just optimistic. It doesn't matter what happens to them or how bad they got portrayed. they always have a positive way to spin it and a
Yep.
lesson to take out of it. And it's never a victim mindset. It's like, man, how do I take this and just use it as a launching pad?
Yes.
Well, and that's why I asked that question, because I know most people listening to this haven't achieved the level of success you did the first time.
Yeah.
And they tend to think, well, yeah, that's because Justin has this or Justin has that or Justin has this. But arguably, I would say it's harder the next time for a lot of those reasons, which, you have, let's face it, our egos, all of our relationships, everything we built is all on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first time when you're going to achieve success is like, man, I have everything to gain and nothing to lose. And then you're going to achieve it the second time, you're like, I have everything to lose. And basically, I'm just gaining what I had before this last time, right? And so I think that when somebody's listening to a story like they're hearing, it's important to not just take the after story, but also, you talk about the dream, the struggle and the victory, or the dream journey and the victory, right?
Yeah.
It's important to understand that journey. I always tell everybody, just saying the joy is found in the journey, and I'm like, I just think it's BS. It's never fun going through those challenges or those struggles. The joy shows up when you're looking back and go, man, I won, and maybe it was because of those things, right? Do you think that your mindset the first time versus the second time, because both times you won, right? So, I mean, obviously you're optimistic both times. I think we all can agree that that's a natural, that's the thing that separates people that succeed versus people that don't, is like, hey, how can I make something great out of this? But was there a difference in the first time you were achieving your goals, you were chasing it, you were scared to death, you didn't have the relationships, you didn't have the skill set? How was it different the first time versus the second time? What are the things you did differently? Because I think an important thing is this: there are going to be sometimes people rise to the top and then they forget the things that got you there aren't going to take you to the next level.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And what you've learned on the second time is arguably the things that are going to take most people, if they've achieved any sort of success, to the next level as well, right? You got to be willing to go back down into that valley to go back to the top.
Yeah, I feel like as I've watched you guys, as I've watched JKR specifically, one of the lessons I feel like Jefferson's done, it's a lesson that I learned really well in the second one. And it's you want A players around you, like even as you guys have all created a partnership. Mm-hmm. So there's an old Bible verse that says if one can lead 1,000 a flight, two can lead 10,000.
Yeah.
So it's like if Jefferson could lead 1,000 a flight, well, two could lead 2,000, right? Well, no, there's like this synergistic effect of the right people getting together. And it's not that I had the wrong people before, but I didn't have all A plusers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on this second run, I was like, I've surrounded myself with some A plus talent, from the co-founding side as well as from a sales leadership side. And one other thing that's a real blessing about, again, we talked about this, problems introduce you to you, problems introduce you to others. I really met who people really were. There's what I call revealing moments. So I'll give you guys an example. When Jesus was betrayed by Judas, the betrayal was always in there. It's not like he all of a sudden became that. There was a part of him. Now they're freaking best friends, but there's a part of him. So it wasn't until he was revealed in that moment, right? Give him some money, put the pressure on him, then he's revealed. If you remember the story of the prodigal son, it's not until the prodigal son returns that the brothers' jealousies and envies, those were all in him, but they weren't revealed until that moment, right? If you think of, there's a famous line from Shakespeare about Caesar, and he says, "E tu, Brute," which means "you too, Brutus." So Caesar's number one in command, his number one guy, was named Brutus. And if you remember the story, Caesar's ultimately stabbed. His last stab was from Brutus. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "E tu, Brute," like, you stabbed me too? Like, because his own inner circle did it, but not your boy, not your freaking number one in command. And so Brutus was revealed to him. And so it's a blessing when people are revealed to you.
Yeah.
It's like, like my Missy, so my wife Missy is got this like sixth sense. So as we were first getting married, she'd be like, our first years of marriage, she'd be like, "I think they're a wolf," and I'm, figuratively.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Babe, I think they're a sheep. They look like a sheep." And she's like, "No, I think they're a wolf." I'm like, "Babe, because you're kind of like looking for the best in them, and plus maybe looking past some of the stuff that you're like, no, I think they're a sheep." And she's like, "Okay, whatever you think. I'm pretty sure they're a wolf." And then 6 months later, it's like, "How?" You're like, "Oh, they're a wolf."
Should have
and
listened.
she's like, "I kind of try to tell you, all of our wives have kind of that
Yes.
instinct,
They sure do.
Yes.
And we have to learn to tune into that kind of stuff so that you learn to people can be revealed and our wives can, search it out fast. So surrounding yourself with A+ people was a huge lesson I learned during my journey that I applied at this one.
Yeah.
And then all of those leadership lessons and principles and just all of the stuff you learn. So for example, having a really compelling product narrative. Like I didn't want to launch a company that was like, my multivitamin's better than your multivitamin, because then it's just, you could have all the influence in the world, but that's just a hard story for everyone to go out there and tell. Your sales force is like, this is hard. My protein powder is better than yours. That's tough. And so I knew when we were searching, we really, really searched hard to find a story that when someone heard, they're like, that's freaking interesting, because then your sales force can tell the story.
Yeah.
Again, same thing I feel like you guys have done here is you find, here's a unique spot in the marketplace that we can freaking go own, that not everyone else is doing it the way that we're doing it. And a compelling product narrative was a lesson that I learned of how important that is. You can force of will it all you want, but the end consumer needs to hear it and say, I'll give you my credit card and I'll push submit, because that's a good story,
Yep.
So just all of those lessons that I learned on the way up, you just applied, and you know what's so interesting? It's like you collapse time, because you didn't have to make all the same stupid freaking mistakes you made the last 10 years, trying to figure it all out there. So you could just apply with more speed a lot of those earlier lessons that you learned.
Yeah. It's awesome.
I've got a question. So there's levels to this game of life, levels and levels and levels. You've reached some pretty high levels compared to most people in business, right? And again, you achieve that first level of success. So kind of a two-part question. Is there any way you would have been able to go to the next level without the trial that took place? Would you have done it on your own? That's one question. And number two, along kind of maybe with that, I know you believe in God. How much do you see God's grace in allowing that to happen, as hard as it is for him to see his son go through one of his son, right? We're his children, to allow that to happen, knowing how painful it was, knowing there has to be something more in Justin Prince. You compared to other people, what else is Justin what could he do in this life? There's more in this man. So maybe.
Yeah. No, I could not have gone to the level that I'm at now. And by the way, more importantly, where I want to go the next 10 years of my life. That's why I said, like, they didn't betray me. They set me free. Like, it's this chance to truly grow into your full potential. And all of that pain of going through that created the strength to be able to go through it. So that's the first thing. Couple other quick thoughts. So Martin Luther King said, stars shine brightest in the darkest nights. Well, if you've ever been through a dark night in your life, guess what we all want to do when we're in a dark night? We're like, get me the heck out of this. This freaking sucks. Like, get me back to a good night, But the dark night creates contrast, and the contrast creates your moment. So, for example, if all the stars shine bright and you choose to shine bright, you're going to blend in. But if none of the stars shine bright and you choose to shine bright, you're going to stand out. So all the darkness creates contrast, and the contrast creates like, dude, this is my moment, And as I look at the weight and the pressure that I felt going through all of that, I felt like I look back now and it was just God strengthening my shoulders to be able to carry more weight of, the responsibility of providing economic opportunity for families all over the world, and just all that weight of like the responsibility, And I didn't have my shoulders weren't strong enough to carry it before. So you had to like put that pressure down on you to like strengthen you back up. And I was watching one of my favorite movies. In fact, I think it might be my favorite movie. It's called The Count of Monte Cristo. I was watching it again last night. I had one of my sales leaders over last night. I wanted them to watch it because it's such an impactful movie, and this is someone that stood by me during all this stuff. And you guys seen this show, Count of Monte Cristo?
I've never seen it.
Bro, we got to watch this. This is like movie night. It's just so good. But long story short, one of the reasons it's so beautiful is because it goes through justice and mercy and grace. It goes through betrayal and love and all of these emotions that you go through as a human in life, And basically, the man loses his faith in God. He's talking to the priest, and the priest, you have to see the movie. They're in this god-awful prison, the whole thing. And the priest basically says, God, God's here for you. And he goes, priest, we don't talk about God in this place. And he goes, I don't believe in God. And he says, it doesn't matter because God believes in you. And the idea is that like God sometimes uses all the pain, and that's actually how you become the person you were born to, to be. And speaking of God believing in you, think of this. Abraham Lincoln said, I'm a success today because I had a friend who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. Like, if you have a wife that says, baby, you got this, even on your toughest moments, or you have a friend or a business partner or someone that's like, I believe in you. My wife, like, it strengthened us so much because instead of her just crumbling and being in the fetal position of like our life, sucks. She was tough as nails, backbone of steel. She took the online stuff more personal than I did. I was just like, whatever, people are stupid. And she was just like, they're saying, like, you are the most straight arrow, you're like, how dare they,
Yeah.
And it just strengthened us to watch her be so strong. And so your marriage is stronger, you're emotionally stronger, your maturity is higher. All of those things happen through the pain. And like to Jefferson's point, you look back now and it's like, oh, that was easy to go through.
Yeah.
At the time, it felt like you'd never get out of it,
It's because of the reward, though.
Yeah.
It's like I always talk about a woman who has a baby. You never ask how bad it hurts. It's the joy of having a child,
Yes.
right? And so I think it strengthens, and I think I would love to hear a perspective on this too, because when you go through challenges, I said it yesterday morning, one of my favorite quotes by Eleanor Roosevelt, she said, people are like tea bags. You never know their true flavor until you put them in hot water. And to your point of people being exposed.
Yep.
But I think a lot of times it does this to marriages because the way you respond is going to impact your wife, and the way she responds is going to impact you. And if you both are responding the right way, that's where bonds are strengthened.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Hey, as you answer
Weld
this,
you together.
Yeah.
because this goes along. This is going to be. Sorry, I'm hogging all the. I can listen to you forever, by the way, and I've got all these questions for you because I want to learn from you. But along with that, how do you create leverage in your life when these situations happen? Because you've spent your entire life, from my perspective, creating leverage. That's why your wife did what she did. That's why your children supported you. That's why when you got yourself in this position, you had leverage because of who you are and what you've done. Maybe as you're answering that, talk about
Yeah,
how
so
we-
check
how
this
we
out.
create
So
that.
you guys have seen like someone in an arm wrestle, some big, huge arm, and then some guy that's smaller. And the smaller guy can beat the big guy. You're like, how the freak is that possible? The guy's like a huge bodybuilder. It's because they know how to leverage the leverage points. So how do you create leverage? First thing is you clarify what you want. So like you kind of cast out, here's what I want, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And vision, the way you get through hard times is it's basically with vision. It's like there's an old Bible verse says, where there is no vision, people perish. One of the reasons why is because when it just gets this close up in your mind, you can't see past it, and you can't navigate.
Yeah, it's not 20/20 vision.
It's not
It's foresight vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about it this way. It's like whenever you go through something hard, if your 15-year-old son is really struggling right now, what do you do as a parent? Well, you answer the question. That's what vision does. Vision answers the question, will it always be this way? If your marriage is in a hard time, and we remind ourselves it's not always going to be this way, we're having a rough night, sun's coming up in the east, you have cast vision. The marriage is going to get through it. The son's going to get through it. The business is going to get through it. So I kind of cast it out of vision. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is both parts. So we both run to pleasure and we run from pain, but which one do you guys think we run harder from? Do we run to pleasure, or do we run harder and push away from pain?
Probably from
I would
pain.
say natural is to run away from pain.
Run away
yeah.
from pain, 100%. Both are leverage points, though. So, for example, if I said to you, hey, you could make $1 million. Well, that's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. We'd all be excited about $1 million. If I said to you, I'm going to break into your house tonight and I'm going to steal everything that's the most valuable to you. I'll steal your guns, your hunting weapons, whatever. But I'll steal anything that's most valuable to you tonight. What are you going to do? You're going to stay up all night with a shotgun. So what's the difference? The difference is you're not going to stay up all night tonight chasing the dream of I could earn $1 million, but you'll stay up all night with the fear of I don't want to lose anything. So we avoid pain, and that's more visceral. It's like the tip of your tongue, where the motivation again is more in the back of your mind. So I try and encourage people to stack reasons for why you want it. So clarify what you want, and then stack reasons. I want it for my kids. You start going through the visceral reasons of what I want. That's more the positive. But dude, go through all the visceral reasons of what you don't want too.
Yeah,
And
what does it cost you to not achieve this thing?
who loses if you don't win? What does it cost you to not get it? Like, who finally says enough is enough with you? I can't take this anymore. You say things and you don't do things. Like, you start creating the pain of it. All of a sudden you're like, I do not want that. So what I don't want, and all the reasons I don't want to fail, and all the reasons I'm not going to give up that are negative, are also because they're hurtful, they're painful. Those can be more viscerally on your tip of your tongue. So what do I want? Why do I want it? And then why? Like all the ramifications if I don't go make this thing happen. Those actually can burn more fuel. And then once you have that, then you get into to basically the how. So it's the what do I want? Why do I want it? And then how. Most people, what they do is they get into how right away, and how creates typically more doubt and fear. So your emotional state's more full of doubt, more full of fear. we don't, particularly when you're doing something you've never done before, you're like, God, I don't know if I can do this. What do I say? And we start like overthinking it and we get into our head, out of our heart. If you focus on what you want and why you want it, you'll get into an emotional state of certainty. This is what I want with my life. This is why I want it. Like emotional certainty, shoulders back, chin up, good vibes. The how's actually the easy part.
Yeah.
You guys know how it is. We just start knocking crap out.
Yeah.
How do you do it? I freaking don't even know how I did. I just started doing it. Like started knocking stuff out.
Yeah.
If you stay focused on the what you want, why you want it. So think about it this way. You stay focused on the dream, not the drama. So, people don't join drama, they join dreams. Like that's the what, that's the vision, right? Here's where we're going. Like, let's go. Again, I feel like I've watched this even with you guys with your business. It's like, we're going to go here. When you guys first all started partner up, we're going to go here. You weren't there yet.
Right.
It's just like, guys, it's like, but then this technician and this salesperson, it's all the drama stuff. Yeah, we solve all that, but that's not what we're focused on. That's like, that's the how. Like, how do we here's where we're going. We're going to get there. Here's why we're going to get there. Here's the whys. Here's the things we're running away from, things we're going to avoid. And then you just get into the how. The how is actually easy if you'll stay focused on the what and the why.
It's also almost never moving. Like when you look back, if you would have tried to plan out the how, it never would have happened the way you thought it was going to be planned out anyway.
Yeah.
Which is why you can only connect the dots backwards,
100%.
But never forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so Jobs gave that famous quote in Stanford at the commencement address. He basically says, we can't connect the dots of your life looking forward. You can only connect them looking back.
Yep.
And it's because the how, you figure the how out as you go. If you stay in a good emotional state, certainty, clarity, purpose, mission, dreams, focus, and you live life with a sense of urgency, meaning it's one of the reasons I love you guys is you don't, successful people have a pep in their step. It's like if you got a business to launch. If you got a book to write. I got a YouTube to post it. If you got sorry to say it. Like go, dude. Urgency, like memento mori. Marcus Aurelius is a famous line. He used to have a little coin in his pocket. Memento mori meant meditate on mortality. Just remind yourself you're going to die. Yeah. And he said, Marcus used to say, you could leave life right now. Let it determine what you do, say, and think. We were just in Hawaii for fall break or for Christmas break, pardon me. And we stayed at this little villa right next to Turtle Bay in Oahu. So it's part of the Ritz. The Ritz is a hotel, but then they have these little villas. And it's literally like slide it open, you're on the grass, you're on the beach, right? And so my little son, he's 13. We almost like lost track of him because he wanted to snorkel so much. He's just snorkeling all the time because it's one of these natural bays. They call it Turtle Bay. Yeah. So you can snorkel your little heart out, without big waves and so on. And so my wife's out there, the kids are out there. I was actually in grabbing some lunch. And my little boy walks in. He goes, "Hey, Dad, can I get your credit card? I'm going to buy some." He didn't want to have the big snorkel goggles. He wanted just like swimming goggles. They were easier for him to navigate. And I said, "That's fine." He comes back in. He goes, Dad, he's kind of frantic. And he's like, "I was swimming, and this guy next to me, he's underwater, right? And the guy next to him's got his snorkel thing on, but the snorkel's not in his mouth." And as a little kid, he's 13, you kind of are like, well, I don't want to like overreact. And plus, I don't know what the heck's going on. Maybe he's holding his breath or whatever. But then he also has enough human intuition to be like, something's freaking wrong here. So he goes up to an adult next to him and goes, "Hey, I think this guy's something is not right." And the guy goes, "I'm sure he's just holding his breath." He's like, "I don't think so." So the guy goes over. He walks. He said, "Dad, right?" You're like, "Oh my gosh, you gotta come out here." I go out. There's full CPR right there. Right next, right there on the beach. Everyone's just kind of like the whole beach pauses.
Wow.
The emergency comes. They did CPR for 14 minutes. The man dies. His wife's there. His two kids are they're in the chairs right next to us.
Wow.
And his two teenage kids. You can imagine he was Japanese. He was from Japan, so his kids can't quite speak the language. His wife can't either. You can imagine one of our poor wives trying to like process this. We're all just sitting there on the beach. You can leave life right now. Let it determine what you do, say, and think. Like live your life with urgency, not frantic, but focus. Like have mission, have purpose, have values. Like where are we going with this thing? Because you don't know how many more breaths do we all get?
Right.
What podcast is the last podcast? And I think that kind of stuff, that vision, is the stuff that pulls you through. So like revenge. And I felt it, dude. When that freaking whole thing happened, I was like, freaking A. I felt the revenge. But revenge burns like gunpowder. So it's like Tom Brady was a 299th pick. And he had, the guy's a total winner. You can imagine he's just like ticked down all the teams that passed him which was everybody. By the way, he's thrown more touchdowns against. He holds the record of the amount of touchdowns per every single team in the NFL. But let me ask you this: how do you keep that level of hunger and venom and revenge after you win one? What about after you won two? What about after you win three? There's a famous boxing quote that says, it's easy to run the miles until you sleep in silk sheets, and then it's hard to wake up at 4 a.m. and run the miles. When you're in the hood, it's not that hard. The point I'm saying is, at some point, you got to transfer from like revenge to legacy, to like purpose, to mission, because revenge will burn like gunpowder, like being slighted by somebody. It burns super hot, super intense. And by the way, man, you can use it for like 6 weeks or 3 months or maybe even a year to like get you freaking going. Like, let's go. Kind of piss you off a little bit. So it's like you can tap into that.
There's a place for it.
There's a place for it.
Yeah.
But dude, you've got to tap into legacy and dreams and goals and purpose and like, who am I as a human? Because that can burn. Your dreams can burn for the whole rest of your life. Wake you up after you win 4 Super Bowls, 5, you've won 6, you won 7. Like, at what point do you just say, man, this is I have a standard here that's not just revenge.
Yeah.
It's a standard of excellence that I hold myself to, with or without, feeling like I need to go prove myself over and over and over.
Right. And I feel like everybody goes through that revenge or this insecure response, right? Which is what it is. Like, I'll show you, prove to everybody that I can do this. Most people that win, I would love to hear your perspective on this, because I know I went through it. I'm sure you guys did too.
I think there's a healthy version of it, and there's a not so healthy version of it.
And I think it usually gets somebody started pretty well. But then what keeps somebody going, like Tom Brady's a great example, long term, it's got to change from this like internal, I'll show you, lack of self-esteem, which is where I think that revenge piece comes from, to something bigger than yourself, right? Your legacy, whose life are you changing? What impact are you making? And it becomes this internal thing to a selfless pursuit. So I'm sure you've used that. Obviously, you just talked about it, revenge with this, issue, I guess a few years ago. But I'm sure early on in your career you used that too, right? I don't know if you were like I was. I was low self-esteem, man. I thought I wanted a Ferrari, because if I drove a Ferrari, then maybe it would show that I was successful.
I don't ever know if I felt that as much. But like, to Jefferson's point, I had people that told me, like, this is in the early days. Like, dude, you're like, they'd make fun of, they kind of like, well, good luck with your thing, bro. Hope it goes well. Like, kind of like put you down. And I remember thinking to myself, you just freaking guaranteed my success, dude.
Yeah.
Now, I remember I was making no money at this point, but I was just like, I'm not going to see you like at a wedding reception in 6 months, and you're like, how's your little thing going? I'm like, I'm going to crush this. Yeah. So that's like almost like the pissed offness of it, like using it as a little bit of fuel.
Yeah.
But you guys know how it is, dude. You look back at that person now, and it doesn't even tap into any fire for you at all. You're just like, oh my gosh, Randall ticked me off. Like, who cares? Because you get to a point.
Rodney, Randall,
Rodney
those names.
at this point. Like, come on. You just get to a point where you're just like, you just have way bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
Way bigger dreams, and just don't even, it's just, that log does not even appear on your fire anymore.
It's cool how it transitions, though, because it goes from that, and I know Jeffrey talks about it, and he had a chip on his shoulder, and he was fired up, and he wanted to do something special, and he had a friend of his dad's that said something similar, and he remembers it word for word, very specifically.
Me too.
There's a lot of stuff that's happened between then and now, and he remembers that like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
But then it just turns into something else. And now we're fired up, and we get energy from other things. Like, my family gives me an incredible amount of energy.
Yeah.
Working with this team out here and being able to watch their eyes light up, and they got more belief in themselves now than they've ever had before. It's just different.
But see, here's the thing, though. That's you tapping into the best version of you. Like, you've created this to where you're tapping into the best version of you. I'll give you guys an example. So there's a doctor named Dr. Daniel Gilbert. He's written he's studied basically your future self, like, for 20 years. Written a book about it, done TED Talks, the whole thing. He's a Harvard psychologist. He created a theory. It's called the end of history illusion. The end of history illusion basically says this. When you look back at your life 10 years, so just think about, as you listen to this, think of your life 10 years ago, but think of your age 10 years ago, kids' age 10 years ago, marriage 10 years ago. And you say, how much have I changed in the last 10 years? If you really think about it, like, freaking hey, dude, a lot. I look at the world different. I'm just way more mature, or whatever. I'm a bit more built. Like, you just go through all the list of how you've changed. The end of history illusion basically says that we think that we're a finished product right now. Like, in other words, dude, I've changed a lot. Like, I arrived. I'm there. Like, this is it. And the truth is, you're as fleeting and as transient right now as a human as you've ever been. Because think about you at 7 or 17 or 27 or 37, you're just a completely different person. Well, 10 years from now, you're going to be a completely different person you are now.
Yeah.
And so here's the point. You are not who you are. You are who you were born to be. And so, like Jefferson, like, this is one of the reasons like it like fires you up, is because it's all tapping into the person you were born to be, to create an opportunity for people where their eyes light up and they make that first sale, or maybe they help support the sale, and it just is creating economic opportunity in their home, and their like confidence is growing, and there's a culture, and they didn't even know they could accomplish this in their wildest dreams, but that taps into you. That's because that's the person you were born to be, being like, you're feeding, in essence, the person you're born to be. And you're also not what you did. We all make mistakes. We've all done stupid things, but at some point you are what you repeatedly do. So our habits and our standards and our identity, it will either destroy your life over time, or it will define your life on the positive over time. Because you can say, again, we all make mistakes. We all do stupid stuff. And so our stupid moments don't have to define us. But dude, it's like Aristotle says, excellence is not an act, it's a habit. He says, therefore you are what you repeatedly do. And at some point, if you just repeatedly do it over and over, at some point it's like, yo, that is you.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do all the time.
Yeah. Right.
It's true.
Doesn't mean you can't change, but man, that is you now. You might want to like update that identity, because that's not awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think a lot of times, you say updating identity. And I know a lot of times people, you hear these things like people saying act as if, And I don't know, I have a challenge with that because, I've always said that on Halloween, some people dress up as a cowboy, and other people, that's just what they wear every day, and it's normal for them, right? So you've got to get to a place to where the things that cause you to win in life is who you actually are, which is your habits. It's the things you choose to do, which up front are uncomfortable. You start working out, you're going to be sore. Eventually, you start seeking out that soreness, or you feel like you didn't actually get a workout, right? So do you feel like at this stage in your life, achieving, you did $100 million last year in revenue, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah,
great job. You impacted a lot of lives, but now there's more riding on it now this year than there was last year.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel that way,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I feel that way for you.
Yeah, you guys know, it's just the pressure just feels like it ramps,
Yeah. And I think that's a positive thing. But obviously there is some habits that you have to change, some things that you're going to have to do to be able to go to that next level. How do you communicate that with yourself and then implement that into your life? Because that's the same process that somebody listening to this decides, man, maybe I want to go lose some weight, or I want to, whatever it is they want to improve in their life. It's a similar process, but how do you go implement that process in your life to know that, okay, if I'm going to go grow this year, these are some things I got to change?
Yeah, so check this out. I'll give you guys a little framework, and I'll tell you a quick story. So I'll give you a framework a buddy of mine shared with me. I was just like, oh, so good. It'd be freaking awesome to do this for your team. In fact, if you ever want, I'll do this for your team. So it's an acronym called RICHES. So what do we all want? We all want to be rich, right? Well, what is rich? So it's an acronym. The R stands for relationships. We want to be rich in relationships.
Yeah.
So your kids, rich with that deep relationship with your kids, deep with that deep relationship with your spouse. And so the thing I'd encourage you to think about is this. If you cast it out 10 years from now, but even the 10x version of it, if you really challenge yourself, because you know how it is, most of us overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10, you know? So 10 years from now, that relationship with your spouse, what does that look like if you were to write that down? And 10 years from now with your kids, 10 years from now with your business partners, 10 years from now, what do we all look like? How old are we? What's going on? 10 years from now with your community. So in other words, relationships. So that's your R. I is income. So income would be, how much money am I making 10 years from now? By the way, most of us think linearly. So we're making 100 grand, I'd be making 120. It's like, dude, what if you make a 10x this thing? What if instead of 100 grand, I'd made $1 million in a year? Like, whoa, right? You kind of challenge yourself to think a little bigger. But what about your savings? What about maybe your asset-based income? So like, I'm making this much from my earned income, but man, I have passive income from my assets that are $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, whatever it is a month. Oh my gosh. So what's my net worth 10 years from now? Another question I'd ask if you're writing this down, you say, what emotions what would that feel like? Maybe you'd feel some emotions of peace or security or maybe accomplishment. You know, like we paid off all of our debt. What does it feel like? What does the emotion feel like? So imagine you write that down. The C is your character. So character would be like your values. This would be like if you have faith, this would be your faith. So what does that look like? So you explain, man, I have faith in God. I have character. I want people to know me as loyal, as thoughtful, as compassionate, as a winner, like winning character, right? H would be your health. So again, another reasons I respect all of you guys is like 10x from now would be what? Maybe I have no shoulder pain, no back pain. No, maybe I can lift a certain amount. Maybe I weigh, what would I weigh? 10x version of myself. What would my body fat be? And then what would that feel like? Right? So that would I'd feel fit. I'd feel strong. I'd feel energetic. I feel like I could play pickleball 5 days a week. I could hike. I could run. I could hunt. I could do all the things I'm passionate about. Okay, that's your health. E would be your experiences. What experiences would I want in 10 years from now? You know, for example, do I want a second home? Do I want to take my kids here? Do I want to try sushi in Japan or Italian in Italy? Like, what experiences would I want to create? What hunts do I want to go on? You know, whatever, right? Yep. And then lastly is service. You guys know how life is. It's not just about us and accumulation. It's about how can we serve and add value to people, right? So are you giving a certain amount to your church or to a charity, or are you serving your local community? Are you serving the kids in Africa? Or like, what would service look like? 10x from now, who am I serving? How am I serving? What am I giving to? What does that feel like? You know, what are the emotions? What I do is you write all this stuff down and then use this prompt. So if you're listening to the podcast, use this prompt. Go to chat and type in the prompt that says, tell me a story of my future best self based on this. And then take a screenshot of those notes, and upload it to chat. It's the wildest thing you've ever seen.
It's awesome.
It'll tell you, you know, it tells you a story of the day in the life of as this future best self version of yourself. And I've done this I just did this last week, and I had 100 of our top sales leaders actually here in St. George at Black Desert, our golf course. Yep. And I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the room because it's you know, your little 13-year-old's not 13, your little 13-year-old's 23. You know, your 18-year-old's not 18, she's 28. You got a couple I mean, your whole life's changed in 10 years. You know, your 2-year-old's 12. And your marriage of 3 years is not 3 years. You're 13 years into this thing, you know, that kind of thing. And it tells you the story of a day in the life of, and you're kind of like, whoa. And so what happens is you start stepping into the best version of yourself and start saying, you can even go to chat, give me the daily plan that I would need to do to go hit that. So as you start building habits, patterns, and belief systems for that version.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one other quick one. This goes back to this question of like, kind of this fake it till you make it, but you guys know how it is. It's like we set goals, which we should all have. It's great, but we don't get our goals. We get our standards. So for example, all of you have, I'll give you guys an example. You guys don't have goals to work out. If you guys don't work out, you'll feel off. Like in other words, you've built enough of a standard of fitness, of weight, you know, like you're not going to be 400 pounds next time I see you. It's just not going to happen because it would be so below your standards that you set that the goals are down here. So standards are above goals. And then what's above standards is identity. Who am I? So there's a young boy in Wichita, Kansas, flunking out of school, hanging out with the wrong kids, single mom. And he promises mom May of his junior year, he'll take the SAT test. If you remember, the SAT test has 1,600 max points, half 800 points for math, 800 points for basic language and comprehension. So he goes to take the test, he takes it, gets the results back, and he's completely stunned. He scores a 1480, so which means he's a genius. And he looks at it like, no freaking kidding. So he takes it to his mom. He goes, Mom, check this out. And his mom says what all of our moms would have said to us. She goes, baby, did you cheat? He goes, Mom, I did not cheat. This is real, you know. And she goes, man, my son's actually a genius. So he realizes, man, if I'm a genius, I might as well change my behavior and not hang out with the bad kids. I might as well actually go to class. Yeah. So when he goes to class, his teachers are like, Franklin, you're a pretty smart kid. Graduates high school, graduates from junior college, goes to Wichita State, graduates from Wichita State, ultimately goes to the Ivy Leagues, graduates with honors from the Ivy Leagues, becomes an entrepreneur in the magazine industry, becomes one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the magazine industry in the United States. And you say, man, what a cool story. Here's a freaking kid that's flunking out of school, hanging out with the wrong kids, life's going the wrong direction, single mom, he's toast, realizes he's a 1480, he's basically a genius, and changes his whole life. But that's not the end of the story. So check this out. 13 years later, he gets a letter in the mail from Princeton, New Jersey, and it says, Mr. Pierce, you were one of 13 kids that they said we periodically review our test-taking policies and test-taking procedures. And the year that you took the test, You're one of 13 students that was accidentally sent the wrong test score.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't score a 1480. You scored a 740.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, my whole life people have told me your life changed when you got the 1480 test score. He said, my whole life changed when I started acting
Yeah.
like a 1480.
Started believing that.
It's awesome.
It's identity, right? Identity sets new standards. Standard walks right into the goals.
Yep.
And so we have to start to say, who am I? What 10 years from now, that riches exercise, what do I want in relationships? What do I want in income? What do I want in my character? People to say about me to say about myself. Do I keep my word? You know, I do what I say I'm going to do. What do I want in my health? What do I want in experiences? What do I want in service? And then have a vivid story written. That's why chat's so powerful. Have a vivid story written of who that is. And then that identity, you start creating new standards to meet that version of who you are supposed to be, who you're born to be.
So
we got to have you at our team captain MIT if you're available,
Let's
April
do it,
25th. So if you're available that Saturday,
Check it out.
That would be a perfect exercise, dude.
I agree,
Our
dude.
people would eat that.
That's powerful.
I'm eating that up.
It's
so
so
powerful.
It's
So
there's
cool.
not a dry eye in the room. I had grown men that were like, you know, because it starts tapping into what, you know, it really matters in our hearts and in our lives versus just make some dollars, make some sales, all the stuff that we do.
Yeah, amazing.
Really good.
So good. Well, we could go on and on and on. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We know you've got a lot going on, a lot of people that rely on you and count on you, and we're just honored to have you and honored to call you a great friend. And
Yeah, nothing but love for you guys, dude, for sure.
We appreciate all you contribute
brother.
to us. Absolutely. So thank you so much for tuning into Solid Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. Share this episode. Obviously, it goes without saying what a phenomenal man Justin Prince is. He's so good at just all of the different stories he's able to teach through. His acronyms he uses, it helps us remember what he actually teaches, right? So I'm sure we can maybe get him on here again one day, but make sure you share this one because it's one for the books for sure. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. And until then, stay solid.